They made a mistake when they were drunk and decided to pretend nothing happened. But she finds out she's pregnant and decides to keep it a secret because he's about to marry his girlfriend. However, by accident, he finds out that he's going to be a father. Her mother demands that he take responsibility, and his grandmother forces him to marry her. But Shi Yi is not happy about the marriage and can only think about his girlfriend Anna. This is part 2 of the summary of You Are My Destiny. And if you arrived here out of nowhere, just go back to the last video on the channel to understand the whole story. The story continues with Shi Yi being forced to marry Jia Xin. The next day, he takes her home and gives her a divorce agreement. He offers Jia Xin an agreement with alimony, housing, and a job. She refuses, saying it's unnecessary, but he explains that this will help her take care of herself in the future. The next morning, Jia Xin signs the agreement and says she did it because she thinks it's better for the baby to live with him, but she says she doesn't need his money because she's not selling her child. Jia Xin says she will work hard to be able to visit her son with dignity and tells him not to worry, as she won't tell the grandmother anything. Back at work, Jia Xin is promoted and begins to represent the office at important events. The promotion, in fact, was part of Shi Yi's plan to protect her since she is the mother of his child. During a music recital, Jia Xin is very happy to meet her friend Dylan there. Shi Yi arrives at the concert and feels uncomfortable seeing his wife with another man. He sits next to her, and the atmosphere between the three becomes awkward. During the piano performance, Jia Xin starts to doze off despite her efforts to stay awake. She ends up sleeping on Shi Yi's shoulder, which makes him happy. However, when she rests her head on Dylan's shoulder, Shi Yi becomes jealous again. It's common for pregnant women to feel very sleepy, but combining that with a piano recital wasn't a good idea. After the event, Shi Yi throws a fit when he sees his wife with Dylan and tries to take her home. Dylan stops Shi Yi and reminds Jia Xin that her husband asked them to pretend they didn't know each other in public. Dylan's interference only makes Shi Yi angrier, and Asen has to hold him back to prevent a potential fight. Through text, Jia Xin tells Shi Yi that he doesn't need to worry about her, and he leaves irritated. At home, Shi Yi tries to scold his wife during dinner, telling her she can't go around acting like she's still single. But Jia Xin gets nauseous from his scent and runs off. Later, he tries to talk to her in the bedroom, but Jia Xin starts to avoid him. Shi Yi tells her she should stay away from other men and reminds her that, although their marriage is for convenience, she is still married. But Jia Xin can't stand the smell of her husband's shampoo and hides under a blanket. When he leaves to take a phone call, she finally gets to breathe. The next day, Jia Xin feels unwell due to the scent of the humidifier during an art exhibition, and Dylan helps her. At the hospital, the doctor informs her that it's just common pregnancy nausea. Dylan asks several questions about how to relieve the nausea, and the doctor comments that it's rare to see a husband so concerned about his pregnant wife's well-being. They explain that they are not a couple, and that Dylan is just a friend. Jia Xin explains that the baby's father is too busy, but the doctor says nothing is more important than the wife and baby, and asks her to bring her husband to the next appointment. They go to a restaurant, and to avoid misunderstandings, Dylan wears a mask that says, "I'm not her husband." Shi Yi's aunt sees Jia Xin with Dylan, takes photos, and runs to tell her mother that Jia Xin has a lover. Grandmother Wang doesn't believe her daughter and says they have a serious problem to solve. Thanks to Jia Xin's nausea, she finds out that the products of the company her grandson, Zhen Gren, started collaborating with are dangerous for pregnant women and increase the risk of cancer. Grandmother Wang tries to cancel the contract, but Xu Lin tells her to ignore the situation, as no one will find out about the dangerous components. Disappointed in her daughter, the grandmother starts to feel unwell, and Jia Xin, upon arriving, is horrified to see her collapsed. The grandmother is taken to the hospital, and when Shi Yi arrives, the aunt lies, saying that her mother had a sudden health issue because she discovered Jia Xin was having an affair with Dylan. Jia Xin tries to explain herself, but an angry Shi Yi says that if she had asked him to go with her to the doctor, none of this would have happened. The next morning, Jia Xin decides to leave the Wang family home and asks her best friend for shelter. Shi Yi knows the aunt was lying and goes after his wife. He finds her and says he knows she had nothing to do with the grandmother's collapse because he knows she wouldn't be capable of such a thing. After clearing things up with his wife, Shi Yi tells Dylan that he doesn't want him near his wife and takes Jia-shin home. Talking with his wife, Shi Yi learns that her doctor is a very respected one, and the next day, he takes her to prenatal classes. When Dr. Hao arrives, Shi Yi says he was too busy with work but realized that his son was more important. Despite Shi Yi's nice speech, the doctor senses something is wrong. After the prenatal class for first-time moms and dads, Jia-shin returns home alone because Shi Yi had to go back to work. But on her way, she remembers she forgot to ask something to her doctor and returns to see him. Arriving there, she overhears Shi Yi trying to convince her doctor to be the spokesperson for a line of the company's products. But the doctor tells Shi Yi that he doesn't care about his wife and only pretended to be concerned so he could promote his products. After being called selfish and hypocritical, Shi Yi admits that the doctor is right, but says the doctor has no right to judge him because he knows nothing about his marriage. The doctor tells Shi Yi that he failed his duties as a husband and father and sends him away with the contract. Shi Yi leaves angrily and discovers that his wife heard everything. Jia-shin says she never asked him to care about her and asks him not to use her and the baby because it's too cruel. If you want to follow the complete story of You Are My Destiny, please like and subscribe to the channel.